Mrs. Ehlke here. Today I did a project with my son, Aaron, who is 8. He's in 3rd grade, and this is a super fun Thanksgiving project. Aaron, what did we make?
Wait, pies.
Pies, lots of pies. And all we used to make these awesome pie pictures were markers and water and Sharpies, okay? So grab your Crayola markers, grab a Sharpie, and just a little cup of water with a paintbrush, and you can make this cool table full of pie, okay? And maybe think about which pies are your favorite. Can you tell which pies we have? We included a pumpkin pie. This is cherry, pecan, blueberry. Aaron, what kind of pies do you have?
This is this is cherry, this is apple, this is pecan, that is pumpkin.
Pumpkin, lots of different pies. We also designed our own tablecloth. So this is a really fun one where you can get pretty fancy with this table full of pies. And then afterwards, maybe go eat some pie too, because that is delicious. What's your favorite kind of pie to eat, Aaron?
Pumpkin pie.
Pumpkin pie, that is his favorite. Do you like it with Cool Whip too?
Yeah. Favorite cake is cheesecake.
Ooh, cheesecake's good too with a little chocolate drizzled on top. You could definitely add a cheesecake to this one too. So have fun with this, make it super cool, and put all of your favorite pies or cakes into the picture, okay? We'll see you later. So we are going to begin, and I want to show you what we're using. So we have a Sharpie. We have just some plastic tops I've actually used for paint palettes before. I've got 2 smaller brushes and a cup of water. And then we'll be using lots of Crayola markers. It's very important that the markers are washable that we use, except for the Sharpies. So to begin, I'm going to take my round object and trace it a couple different times on my paper. Notice that I'm trying to make it so that part of it goes off the edge of the paper. And it doesn't really matter where you put them, just so that you use up the space of the paper in a couple different areas. This circle I'm doing now actually is completely on the paper, and that's okay for a couple of them, but I would say most of them should be partially off the edge. I'm tracing these with my Sharpie because my Sharpie is waterproof, and that way we won't lose any of these lines when we start adding water to our picture later. So I have 5 sections of circles on my page, and this is a larger paper, so I could fit 5 on them. Now I'm going in and adding pie crust to all of the circles that are going to be pies. And I do this just by making a wavy line around the outside edge of the circles. Now one of my circles is going to be a plate, so I'm not going to put a wavy line around that one. I'm only putting wavy lines around the ones that are going to be pies. So I decided that my circle that is completely on the paper is going to be my plate. And then all of the rest of them are going to be pies. You can pick whichever one you want to choose as your plate. Alright, I'm going to put my Sharpie away for now, and I'm going to start using some of my washable markers to add some color to my pies. And it doesn't really matter which pie is which. I'm going to start with my bottom right here, and I'm going to make this one a pumpkin pie. So I'm starting off by keeping a section in the middle clean, because that's going to be a dollop of Cool Whip. And then I'm just using my orange marker to go around the edges of the pie. I'm not coloring because I'll add the color later with water. Right now I just want my brightest color color to be along the outside edge. If it's not right next to the line, it doesn't really matter, but I'm trying to get it nice and thick, at least close to the line. Now I'm going to switch colors, and I'm going to use some brown. I'm doing the same thing with the brown just along the edges of the crust. I'm just kind of going close enough to the edge. If I don't follow the edge exactly, that's okay. You could really just make a circle kind of in the crust, and it should work just fine that way too. I decided that since I've got this brown marker, I'm going to go ahead and do all of my crusts. And you can see Aaron is doing his as well. Notice that I'm using a fat marker and Aaron's using a skinny marker, but it doesn't really matter what you do. So you can use whichever one you're more comfortable with. For some reason I have like 3 or 4 sets of markers, but I can only find one fat brown marker, so that is why that happened. I decided that since I was doing one crust, I might as well do all of them because they're all about the same color. And because we'll be adding water to these later, they will get lighter, so they won't be like a super dark brown. And just one brown line is enough to get the water going. While I'm doing my crusts, I'm thinking about what different kinds of pie I want besides pumpkin. Before I add more details to the other pies, I've decided that I want to add a pie slice to my plate. And I do that by making 2 lines and then connecting them with kind of a curved line and adding a little bit of crust on the outside. I'm also adding a slice out of whichever pie I took the piece. So in this case I chose that one, but it could really be any of the pies. Alright, I'm going to still use my brown, and for this pie I'm making a lattice on top. It's like where they weave the pie crust in and out. This works really well for fruit pies like blueberry or cherry. I'm sure there's other ones like strawberry rhubarb. So if you want a fruity pie, it's good to have this lattice work on top, and you just do that by making vertical lines and horizontal lines. Just make sure that you leave enough space between the lines, because we do want to have some space to color the fruit in between. So we don't want the lines to be too close together. On the bottom of my picture, I'm adding pecans because that's going to be a pecan pie, and I'm just doing that by kind of coloring in some ovals with brown. They're really more like brown squiggles kind of. I'm also going to add a little bit of detail work to my pie in the middle here. That one's going to be a cherry pie, and it's going to have a crust on the top. So I'm just making these little air holes that bakers use just to kind of let the crust breathe. And I'm just using brown and coloring those. It kind of looks like a star. Aaron decided he wanted another fruit pie. This one's going to be apple for him, so he's making another lattice on his. This is where you can really get creative, and you really make the tops of your pies look like whatever kind of pie you want. Or you can make it more of a cake. It could have a swirl, it could have designs on it, it could have fruit on it. It's kind of whatever. Alright, so to start adding color to my pies, or to color them in, I'm just using plain water and a brush. And like for my pumpkin one here, I just started by painting the water right next to the marker. And the water picks up the marker, and then you can kind of spread it around your picture. And I guess try not to be too crazy with the amount of water that you use, because a little bit of water really can go a long way on these pictures. Now I'm doing the same thing with my crust, so I'm just adding a little bit of water where my crust is, and the water is picking up my brown marker, and then it spreads it around to the rest of the crust so that the crust looks brown. This is why it's important to use washable markers, because they will spread with the water. And then you can see my Sharpie lines aren't moving, so those are staying nice and solid, and the water does not affect them. While I've got the water and the brown on my brush, I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of the crust, and then I'm filling in my pecan pie on the bottom. And it's kind of smearing my pecans, which is great because I want them to kind of smear into the pie. I'm also going to use this on my lattice, and for these I'm just taking one little line of water and going over the top. I want to be careful to leave some white space in between the lattice of the pie crust, because I want to make sure that I have room for the fruit to be added in later. So I'm just trying to kind of go over my marker lines with water, and then I'll let that dry before I go back in and add the fruit, so that it doesn't just turn into a big mess of colors. My middle pie here has a pie crust on top, so all of that is mostly brown too, but I wanted to keep it pretty light. So I don't have a lot of brown on the middle of that pie, and by just taking water and grabbing some of the brown along the crust, it gives it a lighter brown color. The water spreads it a little bit more thin. I'm also being careful not to paint where that piece of pie was taken out of my pie. Now I'm going to work on my plate, and you can pick whatever color you want for your plate. I decided to go with blue, especially because blue and orange are complementary colors. They're opposite on the color wheel. And so since I've got the nice orange pumpkin pie, I thought blue would be a good complement to it. I'm just going to add a ring of color around the plate, and then I'm just going to add a little circle on the inside of the plate as well, underneath the piece of pie. Aaron decided to go with a green plate, so he's doing the same thing with his green marker. I've decided that the pie plate is also going to be blue, so I added a little bit of blue to my pie plate. Now I'm using red to show the inside of my pie that the slice is missing. I'm just adding a little bit of red right under where the pie slice has been taken out. And that way you can kind of see just a little side of the slice so that you can get a little bit of the filling. Aaron's going to do the same thing on his slice, but because he had apple, he's adding a little bit of yellow. I'm also going to add a little bit of red to my slice that's sitting on the plate so that you can see a little bit of the filling on the side. And then I'll put a little brown on the top, since there would be pie crust on the top of that slice. And Aaron's doing the same to his. I'm going to use my water on the plate to add to the slice, and on the pie slice that was cut out, just to wet that down. Filling in the crust on the top of the slice, trying to kind of match it to my pie. And Aaron's going to do the same on his. And making sure his crusts are filled in. And then I'm going to go around my plate, and you can see just putting the water right next to my line brings that blue into the inside of my plate. And I'm going to go ahead and do that with my inside circle too. Just add a little bit of water to the circle, and all of a sudden it really kind of fills out into my plate. Aaron's adding some water to his plate as well. And you don't need the inside circle if you don't want to. We ended up adding a little bit of it later. Alright, now that my lattice is dry, I can add the filling. So I'm just adding some blue marker inside of each of those little white sections. I probably could have mixed a little bit of purple too. I'm also throwing a little bit of blue at the bottom of where I want the whipped cream, just to kind of shade it so it's not like stark white. I'm going to add a little bit of a swirl there. And then now's the time too that you can decide on what kind of tablecloth your pies are sitting on. So you could really add any kind of pattern or design. It could be like a leaf pattern or a floral pattern, a checkered pattern, stripes, polka dots, whatever you want. I decided to go with some green stripes that are vertical, going up and down. And then later I'll be adding some orange stripes that are horizontal. Alright, now that I've added all this new color with marker, I'm going to go back in and paint with water to blend the color in. Aaron decided to make his tablecloth polka dotted, so he's adding lots of dots in complementary colors of blue and orange. So now it's just a matter of going in and adding some detail work. You can see I'm adding a little bit to my Cool Whip on my pumpkin pie. I'm going over my green stripes on my tablecloth so they spread out a little bit, making them a little more interesting. Just with a little streak of water. It doesn't take a lot, especially on the paper that I'm using. It works well just to add a little bit of water to the marker. Aaron's adding some water to all of his dots as well. I'm also adding a little bit of blue along the bottom right corner of all of my plates and my pie dishes. This is just giving a little bit of shading or shadow to each of my plates. So just like I did with the Cool Whip, I'm just kind of going in and blending those shadows in so that it looks like there's a little bit of shading going on underneath each pie plate. I'm also adding a little bit of shading where my pie slices. And that is it.